something haunting about walking through the land on the edge of ruin, where folklore breathes through every fog-drenched path and every enemy feels like a forgotten legend brought to life. It's a world gripped by decay and mysticism, where an unnatural affliction is spreading like wildfire, and you might be its next vessel. This is the world of Wuchang Fallen Feathers, a punishing Soulslike rooted in the myths and chaos of the Ming Dynasty China, and developed also by Chinese studio Lin Z and published by 505 Games. It's a bold step into a genre filled with heavyweights, but it doesn't just survive under the pressure, it rises with some fresh ideas, intense combat, and a powerful progression system that dares to break the mold. At its core, Wu Chang is about combat. Fast, flexible, and ruthlessly punishing, but where many Souls-like leave you underpowered for much of the game, Wu Chang flips the formula. Thanks to a mysterious affliction known as the Feathering, which has gripped the lands of Worship's Rise and plunged the world around you into chaos, you on the other hand grow seemingly stronger over time, unlocking devastating abilities, spells, weapons, and branching deeply into the unique skill trees. Wu Chang constantly provides you the opportunity to develop your character to the way you want to play, while still maintaining the difficulty the players have come to expect from the genre. Want to play as a quick dodging dual blade build? Go for it. Or maybe a heavy hitting battle axe with tanky stats is more your thing? You can do that too. Or maybe you want the flashiness of a one-handed sword, freeing up the other hand to cast powerful spells. That is an option as well. The system encourages experimentation and allows you to respec at any time, so you can constantly tweak the build of your character the way you want to play, rewarding you with skills and attribute buffs that enhance your chosen playstyle along the way. Every weapon class feels distinct, not just in weight and speed, but in their special weapon traits, movesets, and scaling potential. There's a satisfying rhythm to learning your tools and upgrading them through combat, and eventually mastering them in battle. It's empowering, especially when paired with how you level up, not just through raw numbers, but by tailoring your progression and playstyle through the branching skill trees. Set during the turbulent years of the Ming Dynasty, Wu Chang draws heavily from Chinese folklore, weaving a dark and surreal narrative around the supernatural disease known as the Feathering. This affliction doesn't just threaten the world, it's slowly changing you as well. And how that transformation unfolds ties directly into the gameplay. Without spoiling any plot details, Wu Chang constantly keeps you guessing as you explore this world, trying to understand what this affliction is and where it came from, with much of the world around you changing the more you seek to uncover its secrets. The story is told in the familiar, fragmented, Souls-like fashion players have come to expect, with environmental clues and cryptic dialogue and the occasional unsettling cutscenes, but it just works. There's a constant sense of unease, of mystery, and of a power brewing just under the surface. If you're here for boss fights, Wu Chang delivers in spades. From grotesque beasts to corrupted warlords to surreal beauty, each boss feels unique and mechanically complex and also visually striking. Some will test your reflexes, others are going to test your build, and some are going to test your patience. What I especially loved about Wuchang Fallen Feathers is how many of these boss fights felt like a rhythmic dance rather than a simple brute force and numbers with counterattacks. Bosses often felt like they had extremely complex movesets that at times made you feel like you almost never had an opening to attack. However, as you learn the rhythm of the encounter and fully lock in, so to speak, the fights often felt like an epic showdown of patience, endurance, and speed all mashed together in a beautiful dance of combat. These boss encounters are easily the highlight of my experience in my 40+ hours of playing Wuchang Fallen Feathers, and constantly left me feeling the intensity and rush of taking down a boss that I'd been stuck on for hours. What's more impressive is, regardless of how difficult or how long these boss battles took me to overcome, I rarely felt frustrated or cheated, as every fight felt fair even when they were brutally difficult. Speaking of difficulty, the early game difficulty is sharp, but outside of bosses, regular enemies can become surprisingly easy later on. However, Wu Chang balances this by turning bosses into increasingly difficult battles of endurance, especially in the later stages of the game, where attack windows become scarce and enemies rain down relentless combos. These fights often feel less like surviving a monster and more like clashing with an equal in an epic duel of two rising titans. These bosses not only serve as a meaningful challenge to test your skills and gear that you have assembled throughout your journey, but also as a means to tie the various mythologies into the story and help drive the narrative forward. And it's these moments of uncovering these bosses and learning about their backstories and lore tie-ins that help flesh out and bring the fiction to life. But not all bosses maintain their pressure, unfortunately. A few of the final ones, even though visually impressive, felt slightly underwhelming at times in the very later stage of the game. Perhaps this is just mostly due to the fact that I was so meticulous with my playthrough that once I'd unlocked and reached the end game and powered up significantly, some of these boss battles went down surprisingly easy compared to some of the mid-game bosses that I encountered. However, your mileage may vary in this matter, but regardless, Wu Chang is sure to challenge even veterans of the Souls-like genre in at least a few of these encounters. The world of Wuchang Fallen Feathers, one of its most gripping features, not just because it's visually stunning, but because it feels truly lived in and long since abandoned to something dark and mysterious. This isn't just a backdrop for combat, it's a rotting empire haunted by the remnants of a spiritual collapse, and each zone feels like a distinct chapter in a myth long since forgotten. From fog-soaked mountain paths to decaying shrines overtaken by nature and corruption, the game constantly shifts its tone and color, keeping exploration visually fresh and thematically unsettling. You walk through cursed villages where life was clearly interrupted mid-breath, or stumble across blood-soaked altars hidden beneath ancient temples, each area telling a story of what was lost to the feathering. The level design smartly encourages exploration without being overwhelming. Branching paths loop back into themselves in classic Souls-like fashion, but often lead to unexpected surprises, a hidden boss, a unique weapon, or just a glimpse of lore carved into a crumbling wall. There's a deep sense of culture layered into the architecture and landscapes, and with everything from statue placement to ceremonial layouts, subtly hinting at the history of this world, the cultural authenticity paired with the otherworldly influence of the feathering creates a unique tension, a sacred place now defiled, and a nation devoured by its own myths. If you're a fan of the genre, you've probably noticed there isn't a mana bar in Wuchang Fallen Feathers. Instead, Wuchang Fallen Feathers opts to make use of something called Skyborn Might, and this feature aims to replace the mana bar with a system where you are rewarded for playing aggressively, and you are going to passively recharge this Skyborn Might by perfectly dodging enemies and also by landing some attacks in, depending on the weapon that you are using, and this is going to unlock more powerful abilities that you can use in the form of spells, or you can make use of your weapon's discipline, which is going to enable more powerful attacks if you do have enough subsequent Skyborn Might to make use of. The system I found quite enjoyable in Wuchang Fallen Feathers, as it does aim to ensure that the flow of the gameplay is never interrupted by having to constantly use mana flasks in order to recharge your mana, whereas instead you are rewarded for playing aggressively and dodging enemies perfectly, as well as landing critical hits in. Another aspect that I really liked about Wuchang Fallen Feathers is the story is not only told to you through dialogue and various cutscenes, but it's also told to you through the world around you. As you progress the story and uncover more about the Affliction, you start to see how the Affliction takes its grip on Worship's Rise, and as you progress further into Worship's Rise, you will start to learn how the Affliction manifests and corrupts everything around it. The story of Wuchang Fallen Feathers is steeped in mystery and intrigue, a dark narrative wrapped in folklore and filtered through the chaos of the collapsing world, set during the waning years of the Ming Dynasty. The game reimagines history through a supernatural lens, blending real culture mythologies with grim fantasy. At its center of it all, the Feathering, a mysterious affliction that's twisting both people and nature into monstrous reflections of their former selves, and you as the player are no exception. Unlike others, your connection to this curse is different. It empowers you much as it threatens to consume you, and this slow, unsettling transformation becomes a core part of your journey. But where Wu Chang stands out is how it weaves cultural context into the world. You'll encounter references to Chinese spiritual beliefs, old world practices, and regional legends, all reinterpreted through the lens of horror and decay. It's not a story that holds your hand, but it doesn't need to. The sense of unease of being caught in the world that's spiraling out of control, and as you dig deeper, uncovering the truth behind Worship's Rise and the origins of the power, The narrative becomes more than just a background dressing, it becomes a driving force, one that asks whether power earned through corruption is truly strength or just a slower fall. There's much to be said about the world of Wu Chang, where I can describe it as a character almost in its own right. From rotting villages to moonlit temples, each zone is steeped in myth and mystery, and level design is intricately woven with branching paths that constantly invite you to explore, often leading to hidden bosses, powerful gear, or shortcuts back to familiar territory. This sense of discovery of peeling back the layers of Worship's Rise and uncovering its darkest corners is one of the game's strongest suits. It gives Wu Chang the kind of environmental storytelling and atmosphere that the best in the genre are known for. Each area seemingly has a story to tell, and with strikingly contrasting visuals and environments, every location you visit will feel unique and make you constantly want to push further to uncover the many secrets that the world has to offer. Performance-wise, things are a bit of a mixed bag, at least on the review build that I played, with occasional crashes throughout my playthrough, which could break immersion at times and will happen just often enough to be noticeable. That being said, Fire 5 Games is aware of the issues, and hopefully patches will resolve this by the time the full game is launched. Outside these crashes, however, Wu Chang ran actually relatively well on my high-end PC, with minimal frame drops and surprisingly smooth transitions between zones and enemy encounters. I rarely noticed any significant frame drops, and for the most part, it was a smooth experience outside of a few freezes or crashes along the way. And while Fallen Feathers may not be reinventing the Souls-like wheel, it's definitely reforged it with a new kind of steel. Its biggest strength lies in making you feel powerful through earned, well-placed progression that makes every combat decision matter.
Let the heretics suffer judgment. By divine decree, they fall.
Wuchang Fallen Feathers doesn't redefine the Souls-like formula, but it does something just as valuable. It refines it, enhances it, and injects it with its own unique identity, and it's a game that understands what makes the genre tick. The brutal challenge, the layered world building, the satisfaction of triumph, but it also dares to shift the balance of power, letting the player grow into something formidable without losing the thrill of the fight. Whether you're deflecting flurries of attacks with precise parries, or exploring hidden shrines tucked behind forgotten ruins, or reshaping your character into a mythical force of nature, Wu Chang constantly gives you reasons to push forward. Yes, there are cracks in its armor, uneven difficulty outside of bosses, late game encounters occasionally lose their edge, and technical hiccups, at least in the pre-release version, but none of these issues did feel like they held the experience back. And when this game hits its stride in its best boss fights, its most beautiful vistas, and its thrilling sense of empowerment, it stands toe-to-toe with some of the genre's biggest names. For fans of Souls-like, especially those looking for a fresh setting and a powerful curve that lets you rise rather than crawl, the flexibility in build creation, the rich variety of bosses, and the striking world design helps elevate it above many in the recently saturated Souls-like genre. And while it's not without its flaws, some late game balancing and technical hiccups can hold it back at times, but as a full package, Wu Chang is a dark, ambitious experience that fans of the genre will love digging into. With such striking visuals in the environment and level design to the awe-inspiring boss battles, Wu Chang has plenty to offer. With combat that feels well-paced and fast, you're constantly challenged to push yourself as you adapt to the many challenges you face along the way. If you've been hungry for your next Souls-like fix and you're ready to dive into a world of folklore, mystery, and beauty, Wuchang Fallen Feathers is a challenging and rewarding journey worth taking, especially for any fans of the genre.